أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وتراجمة لوحيه. We're going to continue straight from where we left off in the last session, because this is, as I've been saying, is an incredibly long section of the commentary of Ayatollah Jawadi. Now that we have discussed things like the fable of Gharaniq, now Agha moves on to give us a bit more context about all of this different kind of mischief that is going on. So when did this mischief regarding hadith start? And we have to bear in mind that what we are talking about, when we talk about mischief in hadith, we're talking about Sunni hadiths. And because this is a very bitter page of their history, for the Shias, we have a much sweeter experience with hadith. This we will discuss later on. Regarding the Sunni hadith, why and how and when did this all start? So Allah says that history will bear witness that all of this mischief regarding Sunni Ahadith, the forgeries, the banning of hadith, the making up of things about our brilliant personalities, first and foremost the Holy Prophet, this all started during the blessed life of the Holy Prophet, under the slogan of the Book of God is enough for us, Hasbuna Kitabullah, spoken by Umar when the Holy Prophet wanted on his final days to take a pen and paper. He asked for a pen and paper to be given to him so that he could write something due to which the Muslims would never go astray. Umar said a number of things. Amongst them was, the Book of God is enough for us. So these seeds were planted during that time. So in his blessed life, he was prevented from recording something. The pen and paper was withheld from him. He was accused of having fever, not being in his senses, God forbid. Things were said such as, he's just a man, he comes under the influence of anger and happiness like anyone else. In other words, he's prone to human emotions just like anyone else. He can lose his concentration and his thought, and he can be overcome. So what does this all show us? It shows us the true nature of these certain personalities of history and what they were like with the Holy Prophet in his presence, and what kind of motivations they had and what they were really after. We, the Shia Ithnashari, of course, we believe he was completely infallible, that he never spoke from his own desires, that the only thing he uttered was truth, and that his anger and happiness was not from his own selfish desires, but it was part of his infallibility. And really, his anger and happiness was a manifestation of the anger and happiness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. After the death of the Holy Prophet, this mischief continued. Those who claimed that they were the successors of the Prophet should have embarked upon completing the work of the Prophet. If they were truly his successors, if they truly are the Khalifas of the Prophet, then they should have continued the great work of the Prophet. Such as what? Such as collecting the Holy Quran. But instead, who did that? Imam Ali alayhi salam, the true successor of the Holy Prophet. The same should have happened with regards to the sayings of the Prophet. But people stole the position of power, cast doubts on the Quran, didn't do the job themselves, and stopped others from doing this great work. Let's come on to some specifics. Umar, the second caliph, decided at one point to put together the sayings of the Prophet. He called all the companions and asked them their view. They gave their approval, but then for the next one whole month, it says he was uncertain about this, and then he publicly declared the following. Again, all of this I'm summarizing and just giving you the essential details. He said the following to the people. I had given you my decision on this matter before, but then I remembered the situation of the Ahlul Kitab, the people of the book, who had come before you. They had books that were revealed to them, but they neglected those books, and therefore they were left without the blessing of their books of God. However, I swear by God, I am not willing to take part in something that will that will cause the neglect of the Book of God, and therefore I am now abandoning this project of writing the details of the Holy Prophet's life and his hadiths, etc., etc. Okay? So at one moment he was thinking, let me gather the Holy Prophet's lifestyle, his sunnah, his hadith, etc. He consulted the companions. Companions said yes. And then Umar took one whole month to think about it. After that month, he declared openly that actually, now that I remember and I've been thinking about what happened to the Ahlul Kitab who had abandoned their books, I'm scared that if I embark upon this project of gathering the hadiths, that the book of God will be neglected and we will fall into the same situation that the Ahlul Kitab fell into. To some, even amongst Shia Ithnashari, some very, very few people, this actually might sound like a good idea. Can you believe it? To some, this might actually appear as something good, that yes, why should we go so much on hadith? Let's stick to Quran. Quran is everything. So some of the Shia Ithnashari people, very few, but concerning to us, is that they also say a similar thing. But our response is that, hang on a second, what we say is that the sayings of Prophet and Ahlul Bayt will actually make people go towards the Quran more. These things are not there to take the place of the Quran. They emphasize, encourage, and explain the Quran. تراجمة لوحيه. You are the explainers of the revelation. Also, his claim, this Umar's claim, seems to disregard that the Quran is protected by Allah anyway. So what are you talking about? You're saying that we might fall into the same trap as the Ahlul Kitab fell into. Allah has protected his book. Nothing's going to happen to this book. You don't have to worry about that. He has taken it upon himself to protect his holy scripture. Also, he forgets very conveniently that the Quran and Ahlul Bayt have to remain together. And in fact, we see this, that in later times when hadiths now start to be recorded and the memories of the Prophet and his lifestyle start to be recorded, do we see a neglect of the Quran? No, we actually see the opposite. We see a great flourishing of hadith literature and flourishing of Quranic sciences as well. So it did not affect the people's access to the Holy Quran. So as we look at history, now we look at a few decades later, as we go along throughout history. On one hand, at one time you had the prohibition of recording the Prophet's hadiths. Then all of a sudden, when this prohibition was lifted and hadith started to be recorded, now you have a problem, because now there's a whole industry of forging hadiths by people such as Abu Huraira, etc. That as soon as they are able to, they begin this industry, and all of a sudden they are promoted and introduced as the teachers of Islam and great narrators. This forging and everything, this spreading of lies, this spreading of doubts upon the Holy Prophet, this was not done long after the Prophet died. They started actually making up sayings in praise of this one, that one, and spreading it out throughout the lands. Almost, if you look at the number of hadiths that they narrate, you would think that the Prophet did nothing else in his life except for praise these certain personalities. This is an extract from a letter of Muawiyah. Right. He says the following to his workers, or the people under his pay. There are many hadiths that have been spoken in praise of Usman, and these have been spread throughout the cities and the towns. From now on, though, I want that people should now be taught and should be given hadiths in praise of the companions in general and all of the previous Khulafa. Every hadith which has been narrated in praise of Abu Turab, meaning Imam Ali alayhi salam, there must be a corresponding hadith of a similar nature regarding the companions. This is something that I will greatly appreciate. It will greatly please me. And for Abu Turab and his Shias, there will be nothing more painful and heavy on them. This will be something more painful and more heavy upon them than just narrating the merits of Usman. In other words, we are changing our tact now. We did a lot on Usman. Now we go even further. We increase it. We broaden it to the previous Khulafa and the Ashab and everything you have about Imam Ali. Create something of a similar thing, of a similar nature, similar merit about someone else or about the other companions. Now we go on to Aisha. Aisha has the title of Mother of the Believers. This has become a great point, even amongst the Shias, that they say, how can we say anything against Aisha when she is the mother of the believers? Even I have heard, and it hurts me greatly, but even I have heard people who are Zakirin of the community, I won't say scholars, but Zakirin of the community, but who have a public facing role, they have said that, let's not be too harsh on Aisha because she was the mother of the believers and, she was a woman. And by the way, a woman said this, yeah, a woman, female Zakira. She was a woman and can you blame her? And, she would have all these emotions. I mean, this is just ridiculous. She misuses this title. Is she the mother of the believers? Yes, according to Quran, yes. But why? That has a whole context. In very short and brief, she has been called the mother of the believers, not for her own honor, but for the honor of the Holy Prophet. In other words, when he passes away, they are your mothers in the sense that don't marry them after him. His honor should be maintained. But that's a very quick explanation. We're going to move on. So Aisha, she made up sayings in praise of her father. This was probably to counter all of the incidents in which her father got embroiled, Abu Bakr got embroiled, and his character was seriously damaged, and people would have seen what a person he was. So she makes up sayings in praise of her own father. قال لي رسول الله في مرضه. The Holy Prophet said to me during his time of illness, this is narrated by Aisha, call your father Abu Bakr and your brother to me so that I can write something. Because I fear that after me people will be hungry for power and they will jostle each other for power. And they will say such things like, I am more suited for the rulership than another person. Whereas the reality is that Allah and the believers will not accept anyone except for Abu Bakr. So that is her forged hadith regarding her own father. Probably she forged this, or it was forged for her, but then attributed to her. Either way, she was involved to counter that incident of the calamity of Thursday where the Holy Prophet was not given a pen and paper. So maybe this was done to counter that. Even sayings attributed to Imam Ali alayhi salam about the rulers, about the Khulafa, even these were forged. Yeah, we have some, but it's a very long one. But in short, that Imam Ali says things like, خير هذه الأمة بعد نبيها أبو بكر. The best of this nation after the Prophet is Abu Bakr. وخيرها بعد أبي بكر عمر. And the best after Abu Bakr is Umar. things like that. This is, okay, so this is attributed to Imam Ali. However, if you look at Nahju Balagha, well, this is in complete contradiction. He himself says in khutbah number 3, Shikshaqiyya, beware, by Allah, the son of Abu Quhafa, meaning Abu Bakr, dressed himself with it, meaning the caliphate. And he certainly knew that my position in relation to it was the same as the position of the axis in relation to the handmill. The same khutbah goes on to talk about Umar. This one, meaning Umar, put the caliphate in a tough enclosure where the utterance was haughty and the touch was rough, because Umar was an extremely rough, quite harsh, rough person. Mistakes were in plenty, and also the excuses, therefore. If he pulled up its rein, the very nostril would be slit, but if he let it loose, he would be thrown. Consequently, by Allah, people got involved in recklessness, wickedness, unsteadiness, and deviation. The khutbah goes on until he comes to Usman. One of them turned against me. This is talking about the 6-man committee that Umar appointed after him to choose the next ruler. One of them turned against me because of his hatred. The other got inclined the other way due to his in-law relationship and this thing and that thing, till the third man of these people stood up with heaving breasts between his dung and fodder. With him his children of his grandfather, meaning Umayyah, Bani Umayyah, also stood up, swallowing Allah's wealth like a camel devouring the foliage of spring, till his rope broke down. His actions finished him, and his gluttony brought him down prostrate. These are the true words of Mawla, according to Nahjul Balagha. We go on to another person, Muawiyah. Many, many sayings were made up in praise of Muawiyah, if you can believe that. To the extent that almost you would think that they would make him a prophet. إن رسول الله استشار جبرائيل في استكتاب معاوية فقال, things like the Holy Prophet told Jibra'il or signaled to Jibra'il to make Muawiyah one of the writers of the Quran, saying to Jibra'il, make him one of the scribes, فَإِنَّهُ أَمِينٌ, because he is very trustworthy. In another one, that this same kind of hadith, but now, not Jibra'il, but Allah himself is saying this kind of thing. In another one, Abu Huraira narrates from the Prophet, allegedly, of course we don't believe this, that the extremely trustworthy in the eyes of Allah are 3 people. Me, meaning himself, Jibra'il, and Muawiyah. Imagine the level they are trying to show of Muawiyah and Abu Huraira being in the same category as Jibra'il. Na'udhu billah. Anyway, there are many. I have to stop somewhere. Now, what about other people? Well, let's just cut it short. We can say regarding all the companions, in order to counter the 12 Imams, which the Holy Prophet has predicted, narrated, declared that there will be 12 Imams after me. So now how do they counter that? Well, they counter that with the hadith of the 10 chosen ones. So 12 Imams, 10 chosen ones. Again, I don't think I'll read all these because it will just take the time. This leads to the belief, where does this belief come from that, we are Salafi and we believe in the piety of the Sahaba? It all comes from this kind of thing. This leads to the belief in the justice of the companions, that, they can do no wrong, where they say that anyone who saw the Prophet and believed in him, so if you have Iman and you saw physically the Holy Prophet, you become Sahaba. And every Sahaba is going to heaven. That's what they believe. And based on this, they made the belief that anyone who professed Islam in the time of the Prophet, even if it was because of fear or just to save their lives, such as who? Such as Muawiyah, and his father Abu Sufyan, they become stars in the sky of guidance. This is what they believe, that all the Sahaba are stars in the sky. Follow any one of them you wish and you will be guided. So all of these people, even if it was for an hour, even if it was for a minute, if you are believing and you see the Prophet, you become a Sahabi, a companion, and all Sahaba are stars in the sky of guidance. Follow any one of them you wish and you'll be guided. So they become stars in the sky of guidance and you can follow them. In this way, they filled the sky of Islam with all of these fake stars of guidance, whereas the reality was that the Prophet himself was concerned with the evil of some of these companions. Some of them he had clearly said, these people are hypocrites and they would never enter into heaven. For example, we have this hadith, إِنَّ فِي أَصْحَابِي إِثْنَا عَشَرَ مُنَافِقًا. Indeed, amongst my companions there are 12 hypocrites. From amongst them, 8 of them will never enter heaven. So, we have such conflicting reports on this. On one hand, you claim they're all going to go to heaven. They're all stars in the sky of guidance. On the other hand, we have reports from the Prophet who says that, at least some of them are munafiqeen. So, how do we square these things? This is what we have to ask them. Now, the ultimate result of making up all of this, these stars in the sky, was that all of a sudden, the real companions and the real loyal people to the Prophet, they became somehow discarded and unknown. Where was Salman? Where was Abu Zar? Where was Miqdad? Where was Ammar? Where were all these brilliant, brilliant companions? Forget them. Where was Amirul Mu'mineen, who was not even a companion? He was the nafs of the Prophet. They all became discarded, unknown, ignored, pushed to the margins, and these false ones came to the forefront. Another ridiculous thing we see is that definitely in the life of the Prophet, he even cursed some people. Why did he do this? Part of it was meant to prevent them from ever achieving their evil aims and to open people's eyes as to their reality. So in order to overcome this kind of cursing, they made up even more ridiculous sayings by the Prophet. This one, for example, سمعت أبا هريرة. So here, the narrator is again Abu Huraira, surprise, surprise. He says, I heard the Prophet say, Allahumma innama Muhammadun basharun. I heard the Prophet say, O Allah, indeed, Muhammad, meaning himself, is just a man. He gets angry. The way people get angry and men get angry and human beings get angry. وَإِنِّي قَدْ اتَّخَذْتُ عِنْدَكَ أَحَدًا. And indeed, I have taken a pledge with you. And I know you will never betray me in this pledge. فَأَيُّمَا مُؤْمِن. So every believer who I have hurt, or I have cursed, or I have punished, meaning I have lashed them or whipped them for any crime. So any believer, this is the pledge between Allah and the Prophet. So any believer that I have hurt, I have cursed, or I have punished, make this a kafara, a recompense for them. In other words, make this be a forgiveness for their sins, wa qurba, and make them even more closer to you. تُقَرِّبُهُ بِهَا إِلَيْكَ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. So on the Day of Judgment, through me hurting them, through me cursing them, through me punishing them, this will all be a kafara for their sins and they will be even more close to you. Imagine what this means. This means that if the Prophet ever did anything to anyone, you have removed him from the position of infallibility and being totally in sync with Allah. Instead, what you're saying is, yeah, the Prophet did something, but this was actually something good for that person. It makes him even more close to Allah. If the Prophet cursed someone, it means it wasn't really a curse. It was actually like a dua that he becomes even closer to Allah. If the Prophet caught someone doing a crime and punished them with capital punishment, it means that this person will actually be closer to Allah. How can we accept this kind of thing? This is absolutely spinning and spin doctoring to the maximum amount. No reasonable, sensible, logical person can accept this. Do they have an answer? They have a sort of answer. They say that based on this hadith which I just read, They say, well, yes, the Prophet cursed people, but this was actually not a curse. It was asking for mercy. But the reality is that Muawiyah was cursed by the Prophet, Marwan and Marwan's father were cursed by the Prophet. But the rulers used to pay people from the public treasury to make up these kinds of sayings. When did the Prophet curse Muawiyah? Where the Holy Prophet calls Muawiyah and he sends someone, he says, go and call Muawiyah, tell him I want to see him. The guy goes and comes back and says, oh Prophet, Muawiyah is eating. He's not willing to come. After some time, Prophet says, go again, call him, tell him the Prophet is calling you and I'm waiting for him. He goes back, he comes back and he says again, O Prophet of God, Muawiyah says he's eating. In other words, he can't come. The Holy Prophet actually at that time curses Muawiyah and says, may his stomach never be full. From that moment on, Muawiyah would eat and eat and eat and eat, but he would never feel satiated. He would always feel hungry. He would never be full of food. Now, are you saying that this kind of thing is actually something that will make Muawiyah closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? These are all recorded in Sunni books. The conclusion they can come to, the only conclusion they have, is that this was all done in the weak moments of the Prophet, from his personal hatred and love. From his personal hatred and his personal love. If he favored someone, it was just his personal love. If he disfavored someone, it was from his personal hatred. And this is why they say he later regretted and even asked for forgiveness and prayed for them. I think we will stop here. As you can see, there's a lot to discuss. There are a lot of different aspects to this discussion. We still have so many things to get through, but now we're going to come into the holy month of Ramadan where we won't have any sessions as such. At least I think we won't have any sessions, but I can discuss with Sister Ummul Mahdi and decide what we want to do. But there's more of this, so inshallah, if we don't have any sessions, then I'll just do some recorded as best as I can. Sister will go to questions if that's okay. Salam, Shaykh. Was Aisha not divorced by Imam Ali on behalf of Rasulullah after the Shahadat of Rasulullah? And was there a similar thing for Hafsa as well? I have not come across that a divorce was ever done. Once the Holy Prophet leaves this world, when you say divorce, we have to understand what we mean by that. Like, if you mean did she lose the status of Ummul Mu'mineen? No, the Quran confirms that, but like I said, there's a reason, there's a context behind that title. The fact that they have to concoct udul, adalat of Sahaba, is a logical proof for our belief of infallibility. To trust the bringers of revelation and the continuity of that revelation, we need infallibility. They don't have that concept. In fact, they blame us for having that concept in regards to Ahlul Bayt. Then they can concoct udul, yeah. So according to the Salafi belief that everyone who saw Rasulullah will be heading to heaven, Shaitan would also be heading to yeah, Shaitan will also be heading to heaven. Yeah, but they would say that Shaitan is not counted from the Ashab. As in, yeah. Salam alaikum. Thank you for your talk. How does Israeliyat fit in Umar perspective of Hasbuna Kitab Allah? No, I'm not saying that. See, Israeliyat are those narrations from the books of Ahlul Kitab which have crept into our books of Hadith. Here, the narration about Umar was not to say that these things are Israeliyat. His words were, his explanation was, having thought about it, I don't want to gather the Sunnah of the Prophet because I have seen what has happened in Ahl Kitab and I don't want that to happen in the Muslims. I hope that clarifies. When was the ban on Ahadith lifted in the Sunni world? Okay, we'll come to that very soon. Just hold on that question. We'll come to that very soon. Okay, so that was our continuation of this line from Ziyarat Jamia, wa tarajumat lewahيه. We ask Allah to forgive our sins and to grant us a rewarding, sincere month of Ramadan. Please remember me in your prayers, and inshallah, please pray for the zuhur of Imam Zaman. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.